the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Hey guys, good morning and welcome to MorningLine on News Channel 5 Plus. I am Matthew Torres. So we expect some calls today. We are talking about gun laws and just really firearms in general. And to help us out is someone you probably have seen here before, which is the Executive Director of the Tennessee Firearms Association, John Harris, to my left. Thanks so much for being here. I know this is my first time meeting you, so I'm probably going to approach this with several questions.
That's fine.
Understanding things, and you are the man pretty much when it comes to all of this. You're an attorney as well.
Yes, I am a practicing attorney. That's what I do full-time for a living. My work with the Tennessee Firearms Association is all volunteer donated time.
Mm-hmm. You know, I would ask this at the end, but I want to ask this in the beginning now. There's so much debate when it comes to gun laws, gun reform, guns in general. Do you think there will ever be a happy medium, somewhere where everyone can meet in the middle? Is that even possible, you think?
I don't. Theoretically, it's possible. As a practical matter, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason is, on one side of the spectrum, you have people that view this as a fundamental right that the Constitution protects. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have people that don't perceive guns as useful in society. They have an emotional reaction to them, maybe because of some kind of trauma in their own lives or in their family. And you could almost equate it with, asking the question, is there ever going to be a resolution to the debate over pro-life? There's some people that think it's the woman's choice. There's others that think there's no justification. And those are deep core convictions that you're not going to reconcile with just a discussion.
So I'm sensing the answer is really there is probably no way, knowing that it's such a hot button issue.
It is.
But I'm sure there's at least some effort from both sides, a bipartisan effort to at least agree to some terms.
Oh, I think there is. I think both sides want to eliminate as many areas of dispute as possible. It comes from the angle, though, for example, of how do you approach what's sort of like Trump and Pelosi recently, and we talk about the wall. Mm-hmm. She said no, he left. And sometimes that's the limit of the negotiation.
There is no negotiation, it seems like. So if anyone has questions, any comments, feel free to call the number on your screen, 615-737+. We're here for a whole hour, so we'll talk about a lot of things, including some bills that have already been introduced here in Tennessee, and even what's happening across the country as far as certain laws. And I'm just kind of going to open it up for you. What is one thing that's already sticking out to you that's somewhat been introduced, whether here it's Tennessee or in the U.S.?
The hottest topic that has been introduced so far. Now, we know there's a lot more in the pipeline, but they've not been filed yet. Typically, we'll see somewhere between 50 and 75 firearms-related bills filed each legislative session, each year.
50
to 75.
And I think this morning when I checked, there are 4.
About 4. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's in yet or not, but the one that seems to be generating the most controversy and discussion is a bill by a Nashville senator to enact what's called red flag legislation. That's law that is in place in about 6 states. It's very controversial. It will receive a tremendous amount of resistance from Second Amendment advocates, and I think even civil rights advocates.
What is the red flag legislation?
A red flag law, typically under both state and federal law now, a citizen has fundamentally a right to own a firearm once you reach a certain age. Mm-hmm. And there are defined by statute certain characteristics of citizens, like felony convictions, dishonorable discharge, addicted to drugs or alcohol. There's certain classifications that will render someone a prohibited person, that they can't buy a gun. Well, as a result, really, of the Parkland shooting down in Florida, this issue has come up of there are classes of people, like that young man, who have repeated contacts or run-ins with either law enforcement or healthcare providers maybe even school administrators and disciplinarians in the school system, where the person is
even Travis Ranking,
right,
in with the Waffle House.
Waffle House, yeah, and so the theory is that these people haven't committed a crime bad enough to get arrested or charged. They're not otherwise classifiable as mentally defective or dishonorable discharge, or whatever, one of the other statutory.
But they show red flags.
They show these indicators. And so what they're wanting to do is, government proponents of this red flag legislation want to start creating a database to keep track of how often maybe you have a contact with law enforcement. It could be a seatbelt violation, a tail light, all kinds of stuff. They just want to quantify it all. And so then if you go to buy a gun, and you show up with more than X number of contacts or X number of certain kinds of contacts, they could deny you or delay you. The other thing that's happening is, and we've seen this already in Florida and in Maryland, if you have too many contacts, they may come out and take your guns away from you and have a hearing on whether or not you're too dangerous, even if you've never violated the law otherwise.
So depending on the number of contacts, you either cannot buy a gun
or delayed,
or there's a chance your guns will be confiscated from you.
Yes.
And so who sponsored this?
Steve Dickerson.
Steve Dickerson. And the idea of this, do you understand, I guess, his intent behind this bill?
Yeah, well, there was a movie years ago that Tom Cruise was in where essentially the theme of the movie was thought police. We're going to try to identify people who might,
artificial intelligence,
yes, commit a crime in the future, and we're going to intervene before they ever commit the crime to try to avoid the crime. Well, that's sort of what this red flag law is. These people haven't committed a crime. They're not, by statute, totally prohibited, but yet somebody in society wants to determine that it might be too many red flags on their record to let them have a gun. So they're not prosecuting a criminal act. They're not going to go to jail for it necessarily, but they're saying, we're not going to let you have full access to your constitutionally protected rights. And I think there's a huge barrier to overcome with red flag legislation when the United States Supreme Court says that this right to possess a firearm is something that pre-exists the Constitution. It's not even created by the Constitution, and all the Constitution does is protect that right.
I know this is a step from the senator, but what do you say to people then, as far as if people have clear mental health issues, should they even possess a gun, and B, shouldn't there be some type of barrier to prevent them from obtaining? I guess it goes back
that's a great question, and there is. In the laws that currently exist, someone with a diagnosed, a medically determined mental health issue, someone who has been acquitted of a crime because of an insanity plea, someone who's even on Social Security disability because of a mental health impairment, those people can't legally purchase guns. What these red flags laws want to do is they want to substantially lower that threshold and deny people rights who've never been diagnosed, who've never been charged, who've never been involuntarily committed. So we've got a lot of stuff already in the system if someone does have a real mental health problem to sort of get the guns away from them. Now, but the problem is family members and others like Parkland, it was the school administration, they knew this guy had problems. They didn't want to turn him in and have him, treated. That's where the problem was. It wasn't so much with the issue of who can and can't have a gun. It's they kept this guy out of the system.
So you're saying this bill, it's not right since they're not medically diagnosed?
I think that's it. And they're trying to take the statutory framework and then create a whole another set of people just because they've had contacts or run-ins or recurrences. But these are people who have no criminal, incident and no diagnosed mental health issues, and they want to say we're gonna make it harder for those people, or even deny those people the ability to get a gun.
I know there will be pushback on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. I do want to learn more about this, but for those who are on the line right now, make sure to stay on hold. We'll get to your questions in just a bit, but for those watching, if you do have any questions or comments, 615-737+. We'll be back more with this topic after the break.
Every client